I never thought I'd see James again. 7 years had passed since he walked out of my life, leaving me with nothing but empty promises and a shattered heart. Yet there he was, standing across the crowded gallery in downtown Seattle, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine. My breath caught in my throat. He was even more handsome than I remembered, broader shoulders filling out an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair now touched with distinguished silver at the temples. The boy I'd loved in college had become a devastatingly attractive man. "Charlotte, are you even listening?" Marcus's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. My husband stood beside me, his pale eyes narrowed in irritation. "I was telling you about the Henderson merger." "Sorry," I murmured, forcing myself to look away from James. "I'm listening." Marcus launched back into his monologue about quarterly projections, his voice carrying that familiar condescending tone that made me feel small. At 35, he was successful, wealthy, and constantly reminded me how lucky I was to be Mrs. Marcus Blackwood. Tonight was no different. He'd criticized my emerald green dress, saying it was too attention-seeking for a corporate event. But I felt James's eyes on me from across the room, and for the first time in months, I felt beautiful. "The tech sector is volatile right now," Marcus continued, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "Not that you'd understand the complexities of." "Marcus," a smooth, deep voice interrupted him. My heart hammered against my ribs as James approached us, his confident stride unchanged after all these years. "I don't believe we've met." Up close, he was even more breathtaking. Those piercing blue eyes that had once looked at me with such love now held a polite professional smile. A hint of his cologne, something expensive and woodsy, made my knees weak. "James Morrison," he extended his hand to Marcus, his British accent more pronounced than I remembered. "Morrison and Associates Architecture." Marcus's demeanor shifted instantly, his chest puffing with importance. "Marcus Blackwood, Blackwood Technologies, pleasure to meet you. Your firm designed the Meridian Tower, didn't it?" "Among others," James replied smoothly. Then his gaze shifted to me, and I saw a flicker of something deeper in those blue depths. "And you must be." "My wife, Charlotte," Marcus said dismissively, as if I were an accessory. James's lips curved into a knowing smile that made my pulse race. "Charlotte." The way he said my name, like he was tasting something sweet, sent shivers down my spine. "What a beautiful name. You look absolutely stunning tonight." Heat flooded my cheeks. When was the last time Marcus had called me beautiful? I couldn't remember. "Thank you," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. James stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "That shade of green is remarkable on you. It brings out your eyes." Marcus cleared his throat impatiently. "We should circulate, Charlotte. There are important people here tonight." But James wasn't done. "Actually, I was hoping to discuss the Riverside project with you, Marcus. Your company's involvement could be beneficial." Marcus's eyes lit up with greed. Of course, of course. "Charlotte, why don't you get yourself a drink while James and I talk business?" Before I could protest, Marcus was steering James toward the bar, leaving me standing alone among the abstract paintings. I watched them go, my heart sinking. Even after 7 years, I was still being dismissed, still invisible. I wandered through the gallery, pretending to study the artwork while stealing glances at James. He commanded attention effortlessly, his deep laugh drawing people in. Several women lingered near him, really captivated. Why wouldn't they be? He was successful, charming, and devastatingly handsome. 20 minutes later, I was studying a particularly moody landscape when I felt someone approach from behind. "Not your style." James's voice was soft, intimate. I turned, finding him standing closer than propriety allowed. The scent of his cologne enveloped me, making my head spin. "I prefer impressionists," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Monet was always your favorite." His eyes searched my face. "You had that print of water, lilies above your dorm bed." My breath hitched, he remembered. "That was a long time ago," I whispered. James stepped closer, his voice dropping to that husky tone that used to make me melt. "Not that long. Some things, some people, you never forget." My wedding ring felt heavy on my finger. "James, I know." His gaze flicked to the band, then back to my face. "You're married, happy, I hope." The question hung between us, loaded with meaning. I should have said yes. Should have smiled and told him how wonderful Marcus was, how perfect my life had become. Instead, I looked away. James's hand brushed mine as he reached for his wine glass, the brief contact sending electricity up my arm. "I think about you sometimes," he murmured. "Wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been such a coward." "You weren't a coward," I said automatically. "You had opportunities in London, your career." "My career," he laughed bitterly. "Yes, I chose my career over the woman I loved. Very brave of me. The woman he loved. Past tense, but the words still made my heart race. "Charlotte," Marcus's voice cut through the moment like a blade. He appeared at my elbow, his face flushed with champagne and irritation. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere." "Just admiring the art," I said weakly. Marcus barely glanced at the painting. "We need to leave. Early meeting tomorrow." James straightened, his professional mask sliding back into place. "Of course, it was lovely meeting you both." As Marcus turned away, James caught my hand briefly. His touch was warm, familiar, and absolutely forbidden. "Charlotte," he said softly, pressing something small into my palm. "In case you ever want to catch up properly." I closed my fingers around what felt like a business card, my skin burning where he touched me. "Come on," Marcus snapped, already walking toward the exit. I followed, not daring to look back at James. But I could feel his eyes on me, watching me leave just like I'd watched him walk away 7 years ago. In the car, Marcus launched into a critique of the evening, the pretentious art, the watered-down champagne, the social climbers trying to impress him. I nodded at appropriate intervals, but my mind was elsewhere. The business card seemed to burn in my clutch. James Morrison, Morrison and Associates Architecture. Below the company information, written in his familiar handwriting. "For old time's sake, J." My hands trembled as I tucked it away. Seeing James again had awakened something I'd buried deep. The memory of what it felt like to be desired, cherished, loved completely. Marcus was still talking, but his words faded into white noise. All I could think about was the way James had looked at me, the electricity that sparked when he touched my hand, the promise in his voice when he said my name. I was a married woman. I should throw the card away, forget this encounter ever happened. But as we pulled into our driveway, I knew I wouldn't. Some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Marcus in the shower, his off-key humming echoing through our marble bathroom. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse bedroom, but I felt cold despite the warmth on my skin. James's business card lay on my nightstand where I'd placed it after Marcus fell asleep. In the daylight, it looked so ordinary, just cream-colored cardstock with elegant black lettering. But my fingers trembled as I picked it up, remembering the warmth of his hand against mine. Marcus emerged from the bathroom, already dressed in his perfectly pressed suit. "I have back-to-back meetings today," he announced without looking at me. "Don't wait up. The Henderson deal is finally coming together." I watched him adjust his tie in the mirror, every movement precise and calculated. When had I stopped mattering enough for him to even kiss me goodbye? "Of course," I murmured, pulling the sheets higher. "Good luck with the Hendersons." He paused at the door, finally glancing back. "Wear something appropriate if you go out today. You represent me, Charlotte, remember that." The door clicked shut behind him, and I was alone with the weight of his words and the business card that felt like a lifeline. I stared at my phone for 20 minutes before I found the courage to dial James's number. It rang twice. "Charlotte." His voice was warm, unsurprised, as if he'd been expecting my call. "James, I stopped, unsure how to begin. "I'm glad you called," he said gently. "I was hoping you would. I shouldn't be doing this." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "Having coffee with an old friend? That's hardly scandalous." There was a smile in his voice. "Meet me at Café Luna on 5th Street. You remember it?" Of course I remembered. It was where we'd spent countless afternoons during college, talking about our dreams over endless cups of coffee. "James." "Just coffee, Charlotte. As friends," but the way he said my name suggested anything but friendship. I told myself I was being ridiculous as I chose my outfit. A soft blue sweater that Marcus had once said made me look too casual, and dark jeans he'd banned from my wardrobe. For the first time in years, I dressed for myself. Café Luna hadn't changed. The same mismatched chairs, the same local artwork covering brick walls, the same intoxicating smell of fresh ground beans and possibility. James was already there, sitting at our old table by the window. He stood when he saw me, and my breath caught. In the soft afternoon light, he looked even more handsome than he had at the gallery. His dark hair was slightly tousled, his blue button-down rolled up to reveal strong forearms. When he smiled, it was like stepping into sunshine after years in shadow. "You came," he said, pulling out my chair. I almost didn't. I settled into the seat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he sat across from me. "But you did." His eyes searched mine. "That has to count for something." I ordered a lavender latte, something I never would have dared with Marcus, who found flavored coffees juvenile. James remembered that I used to love trying new things, and the realization made my chest ache. "So," I said, wrapping my hands around the warm mug, "you're back in town permanently." "I bought a penthouse downtown last month." He leaned forward, elbows on the small table. "The Morrison firm is expanding. We're opening a branch here." That's wonderful, James. You always wanted your own firm. Some dreams are worth waiting for." His gaze was intense, loaded with meaning. "Others, well, sometimes we let them slip away when we shouldn't have." My heart hammered against my ribs. "James, I never stopped thinking about you, Charlotte." His voice was low, intimate. "Not once in 7 years. I should have stood up, should have walked away. Instead, I found myself leaning closer, drawn by the familiar warmth in his eyes. "You don't know what my life is like now," I whispered. "Then tell me." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. "Tell me everything." The simple touch sent electricity racing up my arm. When was the last time Marcus had touched me with such tenderness? When had he last looked at me like I was something precious instead of just another acquisition? "I can't," I breathed, but I didn't pull my hand away. "You're not happy." It wasn't a question. James had always been able to read me like an open book. Tears pricked my eyes. "It's complicated." "It doesn't have to be." His thumb traced gentle circles on my knuckles. "Some things are simple, Charlotte. Some things are just right." I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by the familiar scent of his cologne, cedar, and something uniquely him. It brought back memories of lazy Sunday mornings, of feeling cherished and desired, of being with someone who saw the real me. "I should go," I said, but made no move to leave. "Should?" He smiled ruefully. "That word has ruled too much of your life, hasn't it?" He was right, and we both knew it. When had I stopped doing what I wanted and started living by endless shoulds and shouldn'ts? "What about what you want, Charlotte?" James asked softly. "When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to?" I couldn't remember. Every choice, every outfit, every word had been filtered through what Marcus expected, what would reflect well on his image, what was appropriate for his wife. I started then stopped. The words felt foreign on my tongue. "Yes, I want to feel alive again," I whispered. "I want to remember who I used to be before I became someone else's idea of perfect." James's hand tightened on mine. "You're still in there, Charlotte. The woman I fell in love with, passionate, creative, fearless, she's still there." Fell in love with, present tense. The words hung between us like a confession. "James." My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Dinner with the Hartmans tonight. Wear the black dress. Be ready by 7. The spell broke. Reality crashed back, my marriage, my obligations, the life I'd built even if it was slowly suffocating me. "I have to go," I said, standing abruptly. James caught my wrist gently. "This isn't over, Charlotte." I looked down at him, this man who represented everything I'd given up, everything I'd convinced myself I didn't need. His touch burned through me, awakening parts of myself I'd thought were dead. "It has to be," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. He released me slowly, his fingers trailing down my palm. "I'll wait," he said simply. "I've waited 7 years. I can wait a little longer." I walked away on shaking legs, but I could feel his eyes on me until I turned the corner. In my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, my heart racing. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. Terrified, conflicted, but alive. If you think I made the right choice meeting him, leave a like. If not, tell me why in the comments. The next 3 days were torture. I went through the motions, attending Marcus's business dinner in the black dress, smiling at the right moments, playing the perfect wife. But every quiet moment, James's words echoed in my mind. "I'll wait." I found myself checking my phone constantly, both hoping for and dreading a message from him. When it finally came on Thursday afternoon, my hands trembled as I read it. "Charlotte, I know you need time to think, but I also know you felt what I felt at the cafe. I'm working from my penthouse today, top floor of the Meridian building downtown. If you want to see what I've been working on these past 7 years, if you want to talk about architecture like we used to, the door is always open. Jay." I stared at the message for 10 minutes. Architecture. We'd spent countless nights in college poring over design books, dreaming of the buildings we'd create. Marcus had always dismissed my interest as impractical. Before I could lose my nerve, I texted back. "What time?" His response was immediate. "Whenever you're ready." I told myself I was going to see his work. Just his architectural portfolio. Nothing more. I changed clothes 3 times before settling on a simple cream sweater and dark jeans, casual but elegant. Not trying too hard, I told myself, even as I applied lipstick with shaking hands. The Meridian building was stunning, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky like a prayer. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt eternal, each floor bringing me closer to a decision I wasn't sure I was ready to make. James opened the door before I could knock, as if he'd been watching for me. He'd changed from his usual suit into dark jeans and a gray cashmere sweater that made his eyes look storm cloud silver. "Charlotte." My name on his lips was a caress. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't," I admitted, stepping into the space. His penthouse was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city, exposed brick walls, and architectural drawings scattered across a massive oak drafting table. It was sophisticated but lived in, creative but grounded. Everything Marcus's sterile mansion wasn't. "This is incredible," I breathed, moving toward the windows. "The view or the space?" James asked, moving to stand beside me. "Both." I could feel the heat of his body just inches away. "You designed this. Every detail." His voice was soft with pride. I wanted something that felt like home but still pushed boundaries, functional art. I turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. "You always did see buildings as more than just structures. You remember that?" Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. "I remember everything, James." The confession slipped out before I could stop it. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he moved toward the drafting table, his hand settling on my lower back to guide me. The touch was light, professional, but it sent electricity racing through my entire body. "These are some of my recent projects," he said, spreading out blueprints and photographs. "A sustainable housing complex in Portland, a museum in Chicago, a wellness center in Denver." I leaned over the table, genuinely fascinated by his work. Each design was innovative yet organic, pushing environmental boundaries while remaining deeply human. "James, these are extraordinary. You've accomplished everything we dreamed about." "Not everything," he said quietly. I looked up to find him watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "What do you mean?" "I dreamed about creating beautiful spaces with the woman I loved. About building a life together, not just buildings." The air between us crackled with tension. I should have stepped back, should have remembered my wedding ring, my vows, my obligations. Instead, I found myself moving closer. "James, we can't." "Can't what?" His hand came up to cup my cheek. "Can't feel what we're feeling, can't acknowledge that what we had was real." His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch despite every rational thought screaming at me to stop. "You're married," he continued, his voice rough with emotion. "But are you happy, Charlotte? Really happy?" I opened my eyes to meet his gaze. "That's not the question, isn't it?" His other hand found my waist, pulling me slightly closer. "When was the last time someone looked at you like you were the most beautiful thing they'd ever seen? When was the last time someone asked about your dreams instead of telling you what theirs were?" Tears stung my eyes because he was right. Marcus looked at me like a possession to be displayed. James looked at me like I was something precious and rare. "Come here," James said softly, taking my hand and leading me to the balcony. The late afternoon sun painted the city in gold and amber. We stood at the railing, the entire world spread out below us, and for a moment I felt like I could fly. "Remember our spot on campus?" James asked, his arms sliding around my waist. "The roof of the architecture building where we'd go to watch the sunset. You said you were going to build me a house with the most beautiful view in the world," I whispered, the memory so vivid it hurt. "I still want to," he said, turning me to face him. "God, Charlotte, I've tried to forget you. I've dated other women, convinced myself what we had was just college romance. But seeing you again." His hands framed my face, and I could feel his breath against my lips. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "Tell me you don't feel this too, and I'll let you go." I should have said the words, should have thought about Marcus, about my marriage, about the consequences. Instead, I reached up and touched his face, memorizing the feel of his skin. "I can't," I whispered. That was all the permission he needed. His lips found mine, and the world disappeared. This wasn't the hesitant kiss of teenagers we'd once been. This was desperate, hungry, years of longing poured into one perfect moment. I kissed him back with a passion I'd forgotten I possessed, my hands tangling in his hair, my body pressing against his. He tasted like coffee and possibility, like every dream I'd given up. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine, his hands still cupping my face. "Charlotte," he murmured, and my name had never sounded more beautiful. I knew I was crossing a line, knew there would be consequences. But in that moment, feeling more alive and desired than I had in years, I didn't care. "Don't think," I whispered against his lips. "For once, just let me not think." He kissed me again, deeper this time, and I let myself fall into the fire I'd been running from. Whatever happened tomorrow, tonight I was going to remember what it felt like to be wanted for exactly who I was. For the first time in my marriage, I felt like myself again. And that was worth whatever came next. The next morning, I woke up with James's kiss still burning on my lips and the weight of my wedding ring feeling heavier than ever. Marcus was already in the shower, humming his usual off-key tune, completely oblivious to the fact that his wife had spent the previous evening in another man's arms. I stared at my reflection in the bedroom mirror, searching for some visible sign of my betrayal. But I looked exactly the same blonde hair, same green eyes, same face that had been lying to everyone, including myself, for years. "You're quiet this morning," Marcus said, emerging from the bathroom with his usual efficiency. He straightened his tie without looking at me. "Everything all right. Just tired," I managed, the lie sliding out easier than it should have. "I think I'll start going to those yoga classes Emma mentioned. Get back in shape." He nodded absently, already checking his phone. "Good idea. You could use the exercise." The casual cruelty of his words would have crushed me a week ago. Now, they just reminded me of how James had looked at me, like I was perfect exactly as I was. After Marcus left for work, I found myself staring at James's business card, now permanently etched into my memory. I shouldn't call him. I should throw the card away, forget about last night, and focus on fixing my marriage. Instead, his number. "Charlotte," his voice was warm honey over the phone. "I was hoping you'd call." "I shouldn't be doing this," I whispered, even though I was alone in my kitchen. "But you are," he said softly. "Meet me for lunch. That little bistro on 5th Street, Bella's, 1 o'clock. I should have said no, should have hung up and deleted his number. Instead, I heard myself saying, "The next few weeks became a masterclass in deception." I created an elaborate fiction around twice-weekly yoga classes, complete with a fake membership card I designed and printed at the local copy shop. I invented shopping trips with Emma, coffee dates with imaginary friends, and doctor's appointments for non-existent ailments. Each lie came easier than the last, and that terrified me. James and I fell into a routine of stolen afternoons. We'd meet at different restaurants, walk through quiet parks, or sometimes just sit in his car talking for hours. He remembered everything. How I took my coffee, that I loved white orchids, the way I'd always dreamed of becoming an interior designer before Marcus convinced me it wasn't practical. "You have an eye for it," James said one afternoon as we walked through a furniture showroom I'd been dying to visit. He watched me rearrange a display, moving a lamp 2 inches to the left to catch the light perfectly. "Why did you give it up?" Marcus said we needed stability. That design was too competitive, too uncertain. I touched a beautiful silk throw pillow, imagining it in a room I'd never get to create. He wasn't wrong. He was completely wrong, James said firmly. "Charlotte, you're brilliant. You see beauty where others see empty space. Don't let anyone convince you that's not valuable." No one had ever talked to me like that. Marcus discussed my interests the way he'd discuss the weather, something to acknowledge politely before moving on to more important topics. But the guilt was eating me alive. Every time Marcus asked about my day, every time he kissed me goodbye without really seeing me, every time I lied about where I'd been or who I'd seen, I started checking my phone obsessively, terrified that somehow Marcus would see James's texts, even though I deleted them immediately after reading. The paranoia was getting worse. I jumped every time my phone buzzed. I created elaborate mental maps of my lies, making sure the details stayed consistent. I even started taking actual yoga classes once a week, just in case Marcus ever decided to verify my story. "You seem different lately," Emma said during one of our real coffee dates. She studied my face with the sharp attention that had made her a successful lawyer. "Happier, but also, I don't know, guilty." "Guilty." My laugh sounded forced even to me. "About what?" "That's what I'm asking you." She leaned forward, her dark eyes serious. "Charlotte, you know you can tell me anything, right?" For a moment, I almost did. The words were right there. I'm having an affair with my ex-boyfriend. I'm lying to my husband every day. I'm falling in love all over again with someone I can't have. Instead, I smiled and changed the subject. But Marcus was starting to notice too. He'd always been observant. It's what made him good at his job, and my newfound energy wasn't going unnoticed. "You've been glowing lately," he said one evening, looking up from his laptop. "These yoga classes are really working for you." "Thanks," I said, focusing intently on chopping vegetables for dinner. "I feel good. Maybe I should come with you sometime. Meet your instructor." My knife slipped, nicking my finger. "What? Just curious about this yoga place. You talk about it a lot." His tone was casual, but there was something underneath it that made my stomach clench. "What did you say the instructor's name was?" I hadn't mentioned a name because there wasn't one for the fake classes. "Sarah," I said quickly, grabbing the first name that came to mind. "Sarah Chen." He made a note on his phone. "I'll look her up." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart hammering against my ribs. How long before my lies caught up with me? How long before Marcus discovered that half of my yoga classes didn't exist, that Sarah Chen was a fiction, that his wife was living a double life? The next day, James picked up on my anxiety immediately. "You're shaking," he said, covering my hand with his across the cafe table. "What's wrong?" I told him about Marcus's suspicions, about the web of lies getting more complicated every day. James listened without judgment, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. "We could stop," he said quietly. "If this is too much for you, we could stop." The thought of not seeing him anymore, of going back to my gray existence with Marcus, made my chest tighten with panic. "I don't want to," I whispered. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." James was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. "There's another option," he said finally. "What do you mean?" "You could leave him." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Leave Marcus. End my marriage. Choose James, choose myself, choose the life I actually wanted instead of the one I'd settled for. "James, I can't just." "Why not?" He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Charlotte, you're miserable with him. You light up when we're together and dim when you talk about going home. Why are you staying in a marriage that's killing your spirit?" Because it was safe. Because it was expected. Because starting over at 27 felt terrifying and impossible and completely irresponsible. Because I was a coward. But looking at James, seeing the hope and love in his eyes, I wondered if maybe being a coward was worse than being brave. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Working late again, don't wait up." Another evening alone, another night of pretending everything was fine. Another day added to a marriage that felt more like a prison sentence with each passing hour. Drop a comment and tell me, team reconciliation or team revenge? I stared at Marcus's text, the words blurring through my guilt-clouded vision. Working late again. How many times had I used that same excuse? "Charlotte." James's voice pulled me back to the present. "What is it?" I showed him the message and he frowned. "He's never home anymore." "Maybe that's for the best," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, something felt wrong. Marcus had always been controlling, demanding to know my every move. This newfound freedom felt suspicious. James reached for my hand again. "Think about what I said, about leaving him. Leaving Marcus." The idea terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. But before I could respond, my phone rang. "Marcus." James and I looked at each other, and I felt the familiar spike of panic. "I have to take this." "Charlotte." Marcus's voice was different, colder. "We need to talk, I'm coming home." My blood turned to ice. "Now," but you said. Now, the line went dead. James was already standing, reading my expression. "What's wrong?" "He's coming home. He wants to talk." My hands were shaking as I grabbed my purse. "I have to go, I have to." "Charlotte, breathe." James caught my shoulders, steadying me. "It's probably nothing. Maybe he just wants to discuss dinner plans." But I knew my husband. Marcus didn't do spontaneous. Marcus didn't change plans without reason. And that tone in his voice. 20 minutes later, I was fumbling with my house keys, my hands trembling so badly I could barely get the door open. The living room was dark except for the lamp by Marcus's chair. He was sitting there, waiting. A manila envelope sat on the coffee table in front of him. "Hello, Charlotte." The way he said my name made my skin crawl, like he was tasting something bitter. "Marcus, what's?" "Sit down." His voice was deadly quiet. I remained standing, every instinct screaming at me to run. "What's in the envelope?" Marcus smiled, but it wasn't the smile I'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. This smile was sharp, predatory. "Your confession." He opened the envelope and spread photographs across the coffee table like he was dealing cards. Photos of me and James at Cafe Luna. Photos of us walking to his building. Photos of us on his balcony, kissing. My legs gave out and I collapsed onto the couch. 3 weeks, Marcus said conversationally. "I've known for 3 weeks. Amazing what a good private investigator can capture with the right equipment." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The photos were damning, undeniable proof of every stolen moment, every lie, every betrayal. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Marcus's voice was rising now, the controlled facade cracking. "The yoga classes that don't exist, the mysterious errands, the way you started looking at me like I was some stranger you couldn't wait to escape." "Marcus, Don't," he slammed his hand on the coffee table, making me flinch. "Don't you dare try to explain this away. Don't insult my intelligence with more lies." Tears were streaming down my face, but Marcus showed no mercy. "James Morrison," he continued, picking up one of the photos. "Your college boyfriend, how romantic, how predictable." He laughed bitterly. "Did you plan this whole thing? Did you contact him?" "No, I swear, I ran into him at the gallery opening." "Yes, I know everything, Charlotte. Every coffee date, every afternoon in his penthouse, every lie you told me while you were fucking him." The crude words hit me like a slap. Marcus never spoke like that. Never. "I loved you," he said, and for a moment his voice cracked. "I gave you everything. This house, this life, security. And you threw it all away for what? Some fantasy about your college romance." "It wasn't like that," I whispered. "Then what was it like?" Marcus leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "Tell me, Charlotte. Help me understand how my wife became a cheating whore." I recoiled as if he'd struck me. "Don't call me that." "Why not? It's what you are." He gathered the photos back into a neat pile. "These will come in very handy during our divorce proceedings. Adultery is still grounds in this state. I'll get the house, the assets, everything. You'll walk away with nothing." The finality in his voice terrified me. This wasn't just anger, this was calculated revenge. "I need some air," I managed, standing on shaking legs. "By all means, though I should mention I've changed the locks. Your key won't work when you come back." I stared at him, this man I'd shared a bed with for 3 years, and realized I'd never known him at all. I stumbled toward his study, needing to escape his poisonous words. His laptop was open on the desk, the screensaver dancing across the monitor. Without thinking, I touched the trackpad. The screen came alive, showing his email inbox. And there, in the subject line of an email thread from 2 months ago, I saw James's name. My heart stopped. With trembling fingers, I clicked on the thread. From Marcus Richardson to James Morrison. Subject, business proposition. "James, I have a business proposition that might interest you. My wife Charlotte mentioned running into you at a gallery opening. I believe you two have. History. I'm willing to pay you $50,000 to renew that history. Seduce her. Make her fall for you. Document everything. I need grounds for a divorce that will leave her with nothing. Let me know if you're interested. Marcus Richardson." The world tilted sideways. I scrolled down, reading James's response. "Marcus, interesting proposal. Charlotte was always easy to manipulate, too trusting, too romantic. $50,000 is acceptable. I'll need 2 weeks to establish contact and begin the seduction. Consider it done. James Morrison." And then, more recently, "Marcus, phase 1 complete. She's completely hooked. The emotional manipulation is working perfectly. She actually thinks I still love her. She's ready to leave you for me. Should I continue to the physical affair stage, or do you have enough for court?" James. Marcus's reply, "Continue. I want her completely destroyed when this comes out. Make sure she's in deep before we reveal the truth. The more devastated she is, the less fight she'll have left. I was going to be sick. Every stolen kiss, every whispered confession, every moment I'd felt alive again, it was all a lie, a performance. James had been paid to break my heart. And Marcus had orchestrated the whole thing. Find something interesting. I spun around. Marcus was standing in the doorway, no longer bothering to hide his satisfaction. You hired him, I whispered. You paid James to seduce me. Brilliant, wasn't it? I needed grounds for divorce that would ensure you got nothing. But I also wanted you to suffer the way you made me suffer with your coldness, your distance, your obvious unhappiness with our marriage. So you set me up, made me fall in love again just so you could destroy me. And it worked beautifully. You should have seen yourself, Charlotte. So happy, so alive, so convinced that James actually cared about you. Marcus's laugh was cruel. You were always too naive, too desperate to be loved. I thought about James's hands on my face, his words about leaving Marcus, the way he'd looked at me like I was everything he'd ever wanted. All of it, every single moment. A lie. Comment below, am I the hero or the villain here? I straightened my spine, wiping the tears from my face. Both men had betrayed me, used me, manipulated me. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. You're right, Marcus, I said quietly. I was naive, but not anymore. I screenshot the email thread, forwarding it to my own account before he could stop me. What are you doing? Learning, I said, closing the laptop. Learning that sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones who hurt you the most. I walked past him toward the door, my head held high despite the devastation in my chest. Where are you going? I turned back to look at my husband, my soon-to-be ex-husband, one last time. To show James Morrison what happens when you underestimate Charlotte Richardson. The drive to James's penthouse felt like a death march. Every red light, every turn, brought me closer to a confrontation I wasn't sure I was ready for. But I had to know. I had to hear him admit what he'd done. The doorman recognized me now, nodding as I passed. If only he knew he was letting a fool walk to her final humiliation. James opened the door before I could knock, his face lighting up in that familiar way that had once made my heart race. Now it just made me sick. Charlotte. I wasn't expecting. He stopped, studying my expression. What's wrong? I held up my phone, showing him the screenshots I'd taken. $50,000, James. That's what my husband paid you to seduce me. The color drained from his face. For a moment, he just stood there, mouth slightly open, looking like a man who'd been caught red-handed. Charlotte, I can explain. Can you? I pushed past him into the apartment, pacing across the hardwood floors where we danced just days ago. Can you explain how every kiss, every touch, every word about loving me was just part of a business transaction? James closed the door, running his hands through his dark hair. It wasn't like that, not entirely. Not entirely. I whirled to face him. So some of it was fake, but not all of it. How generous of you to throw in a few genuine moments for free. Charlotte, please, let me explain. He reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me after what you've done. He dropped his hands, shoulders sagging. I was broke, Charlotte, completely broke. The architecture firm failed, I lost everything in the divorce, and I was about to lose this place too. When Marcus approached me with his proposition, I was desperate. So you took the money and played your part perfectly. At first, yes. His voice was barely above a whisper. At first, it was just about survival, but then I saw you again and everything changed. I laughed bitterly. Everything changed. Is that what you call it when you decided to earn your fee by actually sleeping with me? No, James stepped closer, his eyes pleading. Charlotte, I fell in love with you all over again. What happened between us, those afternoons, the way you looked at me, that was real. That was never part of Marcus's plan. How can you stand there and lie to my face? Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. How can you expect me to believe a single word you say? Because I love you. The words exploded from him, raw and desperate. I loved you 8 years ago, and I love you now. Yes, I took Marcus's money, but I was going to give it back. I was going to tell you everything. When, after you destroyed my marriage, after you'd gotten what you wanted. I wanted you. He grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. Not Marcus's money, not some twisted revenge scheme, you, only you. I stared into his green eyes, searching for truth, for any sign that some part of what we'd shared was genuine. But how could I trust my judgment anymore? I'd believed Marcus loved me for 3 years. I'd believed James had come back for me out of love, not greed. I don't know what's real anymore, I whispered, pulling away from his touch. I don't know if anything you've said to me is true. Charlotte, please, did you mean it when you said I was beautiful? When you told me you'd never stopped thinking about me. When you kissed me on that balcony and said you wanted to spend your life with me. James's face crumpled. Yes, God, yes, all of it, every word. But you took the money, you cashed Marcus's checks. I did, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But Charlotte, what we don't have anything. I backed toward the door, my chest tight with grief and rage. Whatever we had was built on lies and manipulation. I can't separate what was real from what was performance anymore. Don't do this, don't let Marcus win. I paused at the door, looking back at the man I'd thought I loved. The man I'd been ready to leave my husband for. Marcus already won, James. The moment you took his first payment, he won. I left him standing there, calling my name, and drove straight to Emma's apartment. Emma took one look at me and pulled me inside, wrapping me in her arms as I finally broke down. Between sobs, I told her everything: Marcus's scheme, James's betrayal, the screenshots, the money. Jesus, Charlotte, she murmured, stroking my hair. I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. How did I not see it? I pulled back, wiping my eyes with the tissues she offered. How did I fall for both of them? Because you're not a manipulative sociopath, Emma said firmly. Because you believe in love and trust and basic human decency. The fact that they don't isn't your fault. I stayed at Emma's that night, and the next morning I called the best divorce lawyer in the city. By noon, I was sitting in a pristine office, sliding the screenshots across a mahogany desk. This is quite damaging to your husband's case, the lawyer said, studying the evidence. Hiring someone to seduce your spouse to gain advantage in divorce proceedings. This could be considered intentional infliction of emotional distress. I want everything, I said quietly. The house, the assets, everything he thought he was so clever to protect. And I want him to know that his little scheme backfired spectacularly. That evening, I returned to our house one last time. Marcus was waiting in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking pleased with himself. How did your confrontation with James go? He asked smugly. Did he confess his undying love while counting his money? I set my purse down carefully, meeting his gaze. He told me he loved me. He begged me to forgive him. And you believed him. Marcus laughed. God, Charlotte, you really are hopeless. Maybe I am, I said calmly. But you made one mistake in your brilliant plan, Marcus. His smile faltered slightly. What's that? I pulled out the divorce papers, setting them on the coffee table between us. You put everything in writing. Every payment, every instruction, every cruel detail of your scheme. And now my lawyer has all of it. The color drained from his face as he realized what I was saying. You're going to lose everything, Marcus. The house, the business assets, everything you were so determined to keep from me. And everyone's going to know exactly what kind of man you really are. I picked up my purse and headed for the door, leaving him staring at the papers that would destroy his life just as thoroughly as he tried to destroy mine. But as I drove back to Emma's, I couldn't shake the image of James's face when I'd accused him of lying about loving me. The pain in his eyes had seemed so genuine. But then again, I'd thought Marcus's love was genuine too. How was I supposed to trust my heart ever again? The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of therapy sessions, legal meetings, and sleepless nights at Emma's guest room. Dr. Patricia Chen had been recommended by my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman who specialized in helping people rebuild after betrayal. Charlotte, you keep using the word love to describe what these men gave you, she said during our 4th session, adjusting her glasses as she studied my body language. But love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't calculate. Love doesn't buy people. I twisted my wedding ring, still wearing it out of habit, and stared at the box of tissues on her coffee table. But James said he fell in love with me again. The way he looked at me, the way he touched me. A good actor can fake anything, Charlotte. The question is, do you want to spend your life wondering what's real? That night, Emma found me crying over a glass of wine in her kitchen, still wearing the same gray sweater I'd had on for 2 days. Honey, you need to stop torturing yourself, she said, sitting beside me and taking the wine glass from my trembling hands. I found something today. She placed a manila folder on the kitchen counter, thick with documents. Remember when you asked me to help you go through Marcus's home office while he was at work? I found more than just the James payments. My heart stopped as she opened the folder. Bank statements, credit card records, email printouts, all bearing Marcus's name. He's been having affairs for 3 years, Charlotte, multiple women. Hotel receipts, jewelry purchases, even an apartment lease in downtown that you never knew about. I stared at the evidence, feeling something shift inside me. Not heartbreak this time, rage. There's more, Emma continued, pulling out a thick stack of financial documents. He's been systematically hiding assets, moving money to offshore accounts, transferring property to shell companies. The James scheme wasn't just about humiliating you. It was about making you look like the unfaithful one, so you'd get nothing in the divorce. I picked up one of the hotel receipts, dated just 2 months ago. The same weekend Marcus had told me he was at a business conference. He played me from every angle. But now we have him, Emma said firmly. My lawyer friend says this is enough to destroy him completely. Financial fraud, adultery, emotional abuse. The court's going to crucify him. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt powerful. The next morning, I called my lawyer and scheduled an emergency meeting. Then I did something I'd been putting off. I blocked James's number and deleted every photo, every text, every trace of him from my phone. Emma watched me do it from across the kitchen table. You sure about this? He made his choice when he took that money, I said, feeling stronger with each deleted message. I don't care if he claims he fell in love later. I don't care if he's sorry. I'm done being someone's second choice. That afternoon, armed with Emma's evidence, I sat across from my lawyer as she outlined our strategy. Not just for the divorce, for everything. With this financial fraud evidence, we can go after him criminally, she explained, spreading the documents across her mahogany desk. His business partners need to know what kind of man they're dealing with. His clients, his investors, everyone. Do it, I said without hesitation. All of it. But even as I felt my power returning, James wouldn't give up. He called Emma's house phone. He sent flowers to my lawyer's office. He even showed up at the coffee shop where I'd started working on my laptop, trying to rebuild my interior design portfolio. Charlotte, please, he said, sliding into the booth across from me uninvited. Just 5 minutes. I closed my laptop and really looked at him. The man who'd made me feel alive again, who'd whispered promises on his penthouse balcony, who'd taken $50,000 to break my heart. You had your 5 minutes 3 weeks ago, I said calmly, and you chose to keep lying. I never lied about loving you. You lied about everything else. I stood up, gathering my things. That's enough for me. As I walked away, I heard him call my name, but I didn't turn around. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like myself again. That evening, Emma and I celebrated with takeout Chinese food and a bottle of champagne in her living room. To new beginnings, she toasted, raising her glass. To never settling for crumbs again, I added, clinking my glass against hers. We were laughing over fortune cookies when Emma's doorbell rang. She frowned, checking her phone. I'm not expecting anyone. Through the window, I saw James standing on the porch, holding a large manila envelope and what looked like a cashier's check. Don't answer it, I said immediately. Charlotte, I can see your car in the driveway, James called through the door. I have something you need to see, something about Marcus that changes everything. Emma looked at me questioningly. Against my better judgment, curiosity won. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. You have 30 seconds. He held up the cashier's check made out to Marcus for $50,000. I returned his money. The day after you confronted me, I liquidated everything I had left and gave it back. And I hired my own private investigator. He handed me the manila envelope. Marcus didn't just pay me to seduce you, Charlotte. He's done this before. Twice. With his first wife and with his business partner's wife 5 years ago. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Photographs, documents, recorded phone conversations, all proving that Marcus had a pattern of destroying women who threatened his control. His first wife tried to leave him, so he orchestrated an affair to discredit her. She lost everything and had a nervous breakdown. His business partner's wife figured out he was embezzling, so he seduced her himself, then exposed the affair to destroy her credibility. I stared at the evidence, feeling sick. Why are you showing me this? Because you deserve to know what kind of monster you married, and because... He stepped closer, his voice breaking. Because I love you, Charlotte, not the performance Marcus paid for the real thing. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it if you'll let me. I looked up at him, this man who'd broken my heart, and was now trying to piece it back together with evidence of my husband's depravity. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances. I need time, I whispered, clutching the envelope. I need to process all of this. James nodded, backing away. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." As he walked back to his car, Emma put her arm around my shoulders. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the evidence in my hands, proof that my marriage had been even more of a lie than I'd realized. And maybe, just maybe, proof that not everything with James had been fake. "I don't know," I admitted. "But for the first time in months, I feel like I have choices." And that, I realized, was everything. 6 months later, I stood in my new design studio, watching the morning light stream through the floor-to-ceiling windows I'd insisted on. The space was everything I'd dreamed of: clean lines, natural materials, and most importantly, it was mine. The divorce settlement had been more generous than I'd dared hope. Marcus's fraud had been so extensive that his legal team advised him to settle quietly rather than face criminal charges. My lawyer had been ruthless, and I'd walked away with enough to start fresh and build the business I'd always wanted. "Charlotte, your 10 a.m. is here," Emma called from the reception area. She'd left her marketing job to become my business partner, and together we'd built something beautiful. I smoothed my navy blazer and walked out to greet Mrs. Henderson, a client who wanted to renovate her Victorian home. As we discussed her vision over coffee, I marveled at how different my life had become. I was making decisions based on my own judgment, trusting my instincts, building something meaningful. James had been patient. Incredibly, impossibly patient. For 3 months after that day with the manila envelope, he'd kept his distance while I worked through everything in therapy. Then he'd started small, a single white rose delivered to my temporary apartment with a note that simply said, "Thinking of you." No pressure, no demands. When I was ready, we'd met for coffee. Then dinner. Then long walks through the city where we talked about everything except us. He'd shown me the charity receipt. He'd donated every penny of Marcus's money to a women's shelter. He'd testified in my divorce proceedings, providing evidence that helped my case. He'd rebuilt his architecture firm from the ground up, refusing any project that compromised his integrity. Most importantly, he'd never once pressured me to forgive him or move faster than I was comfortable with. "I have something to show you," he'd said last week, his green eyes nervous in a way that made my heart flutter. We'd driven to the gallery where we'd reconnected all those months ago. The same space where my world had started unraveling and somehow where it had begun to heal. "Do you remember our first real date?" he asked as we stood before a painting of a lighthouse against stormy seas. Of course. How could I forget? We'd been 20 and fearless, standing in a different gallery, debating the meaning of abstract art until closing time. "It was exactly 7 years ago today," he said, pulling something from his jacket pocket. My breath caught as he dropped to one knee, holding a simple platinum band with a single perfect diamond. Not the massive rock Marcus had chosen to show off his wealth, but something elegant and timeless. "Charlotte," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I broke your trust in the worst possible way, but you've made me a better man. You've shown me what real love looks like. Not the desperate, selfish thing I felt when we were young, but something deeper. Something that puts your happiness before my own." Tears blurred my vision as he continued. "I don't want to complete you or save you or any of that romantic nonsense. You're already complete. You're already strong and brilliant and capable of anything. I just want to walk beside you, to support your dreams, to build something beautiful together as equals." He took a shaky breath. "Will you marry me? Not because you need me, but because you choose me." I looked down at this man who'd hurt me, who'd found his way back to himself, who'd spent months proving that love could be patient and selfless and real. "Yes," I whispered, then louder. "Yes, James, I choose you." The ring slid onto my finger perfectly, and when he stood to kiss me, it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before. Now, 3 months later, I was getting married in 2 hours. Emma burst into my bridal suite at the boutique hotel, her maid of honor dress a perfect sage green that complemented her dark hair. The flowers are gorgeous, the musicians are set up, and James looks like he might pass out from nerves, which is absolutely adorable. I laughed, adjusting the delicate lace sleeves of my dress. I'd chosen something simple and elegant ivory silk with vintage beadwork, nothing like the elaborate gown I'd worn for Marcus. This felt like me. "Are you nervous?" Emma asked, helping me with my pearl earrings. Surprisingly, no. And it was true. I felt calm, centered, sure of my choice in a way I'd never been before. The ceremony was small, just 30 people in the hotel's garden, surrounded by white roses and fairy lights. My parents had flown in from Portland, James's sister from Denver. Dr. Martinez, my therapist, sat in the front row, beaming with pride at how far I'd come. As the string quartet began playing, I walked down the aisle alone. I'd considered asking my father, but this felt more honest. I was choosing this marriage as an independent woman, not being given away by anyone. James stood at the altar in a charcoal gray suit, his eyes bright with unshed tears as he watched me approach. When I reached him, he mouthed, "You're beautiful," and I felt that familiar flutter of attraction mixed with something deeper: trust, respect, genuine partnership. The officiant spoke about love as a choice, about building something together while remaining whole as individuals. When it came time for vows, James went first. "Charlotte, you taught me that real love isn't about possession or control. It's about witnessing someone's strength and celebrating it. It's about choosing each other every day, not because we have to, but because we want to. I promise to support your dreams, to trust your judgment, to love you not despite your independence, but because of it." My own vows came from the heart. "James, you showed me that healing is possible, that people can change, that love can be both passionate and peaceful. I choose you not because I need you, but because loving you makes me more myself. I promise to build this life together as equals, to trust in what we've created, to choose love over fear always." When he slipped the wedding band onto my finger, his hands were steady. When I did the same for him, mine were too. "You may kiss your bride," the officiant announced, and James cupped my face gently, kissing me with a tenderness that spoke of forever. The reception was perfect dinner under the stars, dancing to our favorite songs, toasts from friends who'd watched us find our way back to each other. Emma's speech made everyone cry, talking about watching me transform from a woman who'd lost herself to someone who'd found her power. As James and I swayed to our first dance, he whispered in my ear, "No regrets." I looked around at the faces of people who loved us, at Emma wiping happy tears, at the life I'd built from the ashes of my first marriage. "None," I said, and meant it completely. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better, a real beginning, built on choice and growth, and the kind of love that makes you stronger, not smaller. I was Charlotte Morrison Hayes now, and I'd never been more myself.